Hi, welcome to the Liberal Lounge with Billy and Lola. We have a special guest today, Kristine. She has a lot of experience over the years protesting and was actually a protester on Sunday during the No Kings rally. So we thought we'd invite Kristine over for a first-person point of view.
Yeah. Christina, please tell us a little bit about your history and what you've done with your protesting.
Well, actually, all started back in high school. I went to a Quaker school, and they took us to protest on the weekend for fun.
Oh, so, for fun?
Yeah, I'm not Quaker, but
okay.
Yeah, but they were very, very big on social justice. Quakers.
Okay.
So I've done it over the years, but when Trump got elected the first time, I went to the DC march there, which was fantastic. It was so funny. There were so many people that they said start, and we walked 50 feet, and they said stop, it's over. Like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, because there's so many people, they'd already reached the end.
Oh,
so then we made our own march to the Capitol. But then I came back, and there's a group called Indivisible that I joined, which is people probably know about now.
Mm-hmm.
It was very new. And I was in leadership for the 4 years the first time. I'm still in leadership with that group, as I'm doing a lot right now. And so we organized protests. We sat every Tuesday at Dean Heller, Senator Heller's office, asking about healthcare and things like that. And we did all sorts of protests downtown at the federal courthouse, and then we filled in everywhere. Invisible kind of doesn't have one ideology, just kind of fill in and help. Do people need protesters? Do people need help doing this or that? So that's what we tend to do.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So now I just kind of go on my own and get people hopefully to go with me. So I went Sunday and saw all the videos from Wednesday, which were all kind of a little disturbing on the amount of police force.
Wednesday there was a impromptu protest regarding immigration policies.
Yeah, they started
down on Fremont Street, correct?
Fremont Street and near the federal courthouse where we were, and then they started at an immigration building. I don't know which one it was, but I went through TikTok videos because I heard about there being issues when I was on Twitter, and what I saw was pretty disturbing. Considering, I'm going to give credit to the police for the history. When we've been downtown at the federal courthouse, or I've been on the Strip and doing a protest, they've been very nice to us, very cordial. But the interesting thing is with all this police force is back then, that they don't show up anymore, but extremists here that open carry would show up with cameras and open carry guns on their hips and try to agitate people into a fight. And I had to, as leadership and sometimes running a rally, I had to de-escalate those. Yeah, I took de-escalation training.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I don't know that. I've been to protests before, but I never knew that there was like purposeful people out there trying to de-escalate it. And I'd love to hear more about that.
It depends on which group you're with, but Indivisible, when we were really active, and it may be still doing it now, just we're not really, this group is not that active anymore, they sent us to Greenpeace training for de-escalation. So, you stand in line and they have people like scream in your face and, help you like, what do you say and how do you de-escalate it? And I had two people on our side who wanted to fight the two people on their side. And I had to get them to calm down, and eventually got our guys to go away, and these guys left because they figured there's no fight.
So Greenpeace trained you guys to basically conditioned you to not be reactive.
Yes.
When someone is yelling in your face.
Yeah, and I have that tendency anyways, not to be reactive. So you just know you don't want to escalate it, because when I'm a firm believer in the principles of nonviolent protest, which people think just mean being passive and letting people walk on you, and it's not. It's a very disciplinary. The natural reaction is to want to fight, or to yell, or to scream, or something.
Fight, flight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you follow the principles of nonviolence, you are there to be peaceful and not to have a fight, because I'm a sociologist by education. Historically, peaceful protest wins, violent protest does not, because you can't win people over if you're violent, because then just figure you're both violent and who cares? Yeah. And if you're peaceful and people are attacking you, then that shows off the oppression of the group that's doing the attacking.
So the protest on Saturday, correct, was let's see, I think the numbers came in 13 million?
I've heard all different numbers because it was across the world.
Right.
Both funny, by the way. They had a No Kings protest in England.
Yes.
Which is hilarious.
They literally have a king.
Yeah, they have a king.
Exactly, that's great.
Yeah.
That is
So
great.
I've heard
13
between 8 to 13 million. Yeah.
8 to 13 million, 2,300 cities, events
Mhm.
across our country at least. And obviously, internationally, there were a lot of people supporting this No Kings protest.
There's a lot of misnomers, like historically, like BLM protests, where they had bad actors. They actually turned out to be white nationalists, and this is from the
Yeah.
police department's reports.
Mhm.
This isn't like me saying it. And so there are people that tag on to try to cause problems, and they did find someone in our crowd who had who's MAGA, who had tasers and
Wow.
other things in a kit, and they arrested him and took him away.
Okay.
So on my point earlier about the extremists that would come, is the police never made them leave when they would come. It was their First Amendment right as long as they weren't crossing the line. They technically were crossing the line when they were young officers and didn't realize that. I was told later by an older officer. But they would make a line between us at least so that they couldn't
Right.
come through the line and try to attack anybody. So the idea of the amount of force that was used in last week here, also it's the same kind of force used in LA. We have never had an incident at the federal courthouse at any protest that I've ever been to or I've ever heard of. A police officer did get shot years ago after a BLM protest, but that was not related to the BLM protest. It was
Okay.
something else. It was just at the same time. Wednesday, though, I looked through all the video because they said there were bottles and there were things thrown at them.
That's what I read too.
Yeah.
Is rocks were being thrown,
Yeah,
and that's why they started to use tear gas and flash bombs.
on Twitter, I have a list of the videos that I found.
Okay.
I went through everything looking for bottles, rocks. I didn't go through it with an intent of proving one or the other, but I wanted to see what happened.
Mhm.
Because often there are tag-alongs that do try to cause problems. There are people that want to just get arrested because they think it's funny or fun. I didn't find any of that. I found one video at the back of the courthouse, which you guys know because you live here. It's a very long walk from the front. At the back gate, there's some officers here, and they didn't look like protesters. They all had red bandanas around their mouths.
Okay.
So I wasn't a typical protester. So, but the videos of the people being gassed, rubber bullets. I also heard there were dogs. I saw a video with a dog and I didn't do anything.
Okay.
Tear gas, they were doing literally nothing. They were,
Okay.
the closest protester was about 50 feet away with a flag. And everyone's probably seen that video or picture. It's a Mexican flag. The people that were behind them, because there's video from behind the line
Mhm.
and in front of the line, weren't moving, weren't aggressing, weren't going forward. And all of a sudden you see rubber bullets and you see tear gas and they're running.
And they're running.
And I have multiple videos from multiple different angles seeing this. There's nobody that was aggressing on them whatsoever. I also have video where on Fremont there's, I'm going to say probably maybe 100 of them walking, could be less, straight down Fremont, like get out of our way style, which is
Right.
kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
And there's two photographers taking pictures. I don't know that they were from a news org, but they were definitely photographers. And they rushed from the back, tackled them, and arrested them.
And that was Wednesday night.
That was
the
Wednesday night.
immigration protest
Yeah, and then
Okay.
this was
here in Vegas.
Here in Vegas, yes. There's numerous episodes where you see the police aggressing on people for not committing any illegal action. Supposedly the assembly was dissolved, which also I found out this week from the ACLU. There are legal ways to dissolve an assembly. You can't just dissolve it. The police can't just go, we dissolve it. So they said there were bottles and rocks. I haven't seen any evidence. There might be, but I've seen no evidence that happened.
Okay.
I think they used it as an excuse to end the protest.
Okay.
And then the violence against, like there was a guy and a girl, many people have seen this video, guy and a girl standing there, they walk by, or about 10 of them, and they say, well, are you having fun? Shouldn't you be doing something else or something like that? And the guy shouldn't have said it, but it doesn't matter, it's not illegal. They walked about half a block, the police, and he said, honor your oath, right? And the guy turned around and he goes, you're going to jail now, and he rushes him and the girl. You can see the live video. You can see them, and this is in my feed. You can see them falling to the ground with the camera. You can't see much, but they have an extended video that most people haven't seen, the full live. And they're arresting her and him. She did literally nothing. She didn't say anything to the police, except answer their question. And she's like, what am I being arrested for? And they're like, shut up, shut the F up, stop talking. And where's your ID? And she's like, I'm paraphrasing, I may not have exact words, but and she's like, it's in my bag. He goes, can I go in your bag? And she's like, absolutely not. And he's like, you're going to jail for not having ID. So they're super, super aggressive, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we've not had this relationship with the police here. And I know that went a long way from the consent decree in the early 2000s to try to make a relationship with the community. And now they have all these people they're just gonna be afraid of them,
Yeah.
right? They're just gonna think, and they had not only SWAT there, but they had zebra SWAT there, which I had to look up because there's a logo on a vehicle with a Z that looks like it's the Russian one. So I was like, that's weird. So I looked it up, and zebra SWAT. It's an elite SWAT force that works with terrorists. So what do they do in the history of all the protests in Vegas?
So they activated a counter-terrorist
Yes,
force
yes.
for the protests
That have never been violent ever in the
in
history
Las Vegas.
of the last 10 years. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
this was the largest
Well, that was
Protest.
Saturday.
U.S.
Yeah.
history.
Saturday,
Yeah.
the largest protest in U.S. history. What do you attribute that to?
I want to make one clarification. It's the largest single day protest. There was
Single
one
day.
larger unions like over a couple of
Okay.
years ago.
Oh, and I have a question too
Yeah.
for that, because I know you were just talking about it with like the aggression of the police.
Yeah, it was. Really,
Did it feel like it was a younger crowd? What did the crowd makeup feel like to you?
Well, it's hard. They first all started with women over 65. Who
Wow.
all remembered protesting in their younger days.
Yeah, yeah.
So the first 3 or 4 years was almost 60-70% women over 65, and then some men, some younger people. Then Roe v. Wade, and we started getting more younger people. This was a good mix of all ages. There were everything from kids there to people in walkers. So
And the
Yeah.
big reason why that sticks out in my mind is that with a younger crowd this might have been their first protest.
yeah,
Their first introduction to how the police handle it
Yes.
is what you just described.
Yeah.
So now you have a history of having some good with the bad.
Peaceful.
They only right now have the bad.
right.
You know,
They-
because
yeah.
so they feel like there's that aggression if they're going to do the protest, and that's just not the American way, and that's just not what we should be giving them as the lesson of how to protest, especially when it's peaceful. Like you were
Yeah.
saying, like, you know, it's different. Like you said, if it's not peaceful, it's a violent type of protest, then yeah, we understand that there's
Yeah.
going to be different actions taken. But when it's peaceful, why are these aggressions happening?
I agree totally. And the weird thing so Saturday wasn't as aggressive, right? But the presence was it's insane. And they told all the downtown businesses to board up their businesses. There's never been an incident of people like trashing their businesses. Now, I know the other night on Wednesday there was some graffiti in the morning, but who knows who did that?
Yeah.
Any hanger on out there is like, oh, let me take the advantage, right? So, but yeah, we ate at Carson Kitchen and we were leaving, and they're like, why, my friend asked, why are you boarded up? He's like, protesters. I'm like, dude, do you realize that that's protests have been going on for 10 years, 2 blocks from you? Like, but that's also bad, right? Because they told all the downtown businesses they had to be afraid enough to spend money
To intimidate them.
Yeah, to hire people to board up. They were doing it while we were walking in. And then there were 30 or like at least 30 police SUVs. We walked out, and this was like half hour before the protest. And then we're at the protest on Saturday. Normally the cars honk and beep, which is fun for
Right.
everybody, right?
Yeah.
If someone can't protest because of health reasons or they don't have time, they'll go by and they'll put a flag up or a sign and they'll beep. And we're doing that, and all of a sudden, Metro blocks off the road, and officers line up all the way down the front of the courthouse on both sides because of the heat. The other side was full too, which is rare. And now they're all standing there looking at us with their zip ties here to show us they can arrest us, right? And they're just standing like this, and then there's a group of like 6 in green in the middle who are there to rush the crowd. You know, that's their job, right?
Yeah.
Rush the crowd, arrest people. And on the other side, I hear with the bullhorn, and they stopped for some reason. They never did it on our side, but they're like, you're not allowed to have any sticks or poles bigger than 3/4 of an inch or X long. I think it was 6 inches long. And if you don't give them to us right now, we will arrest you. It's like, so they're sitting with bullhorn with 5 officers behind them, 4 or 5, telling people they're going to arrest them for the size of the stick,
Yeah.
right? Now, they did stop that at some point. I don't know why. But it was just like, why are you acting like this? You want your community to trust you. You want your community to think that you're there to protect
them.
Yeah. Not that you're there to harass them for using their First Amendment right. And that's all that was.
Yeah.
It was just full intimidation. I mean, it didn't intimidate like me and the friends I was, but we were just like, because it was like an SNL skit.
Right.
It was so over the top,
know.
but it's so dangerous.
Yeah.
Because all it takes
Well,
is one thing.
tempers are very, very hot
Yeah.
right now. The emotions and the heat, I mean, it was 110
Yeah.
on Saturday.
Yeah.
So more power to the people that went out there.
So many.
So proud. So
And
proud.
So proud of them.
Let me just tell you that in all the time protesting, we were lucky a lot to get 200 or 300 people to show up.
Yeah.
The fact that we had 8,000 shows that Vegas woke up. And I can tell you from my history, DC notices when Vegas wakes up. LA and New York, they're always going to have tens of thousands of protesters. We have 8,000 people show up on those 2 blocks.
That's significant.
That's
yeah.
significant. And I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question. Why do you think so many? In my sociological studies, I was studying political language and how that helped in the elections in 2000, 2004. And people who are liberal are motivated by motivated by social justice and righting the wrongs,
Okay.
right? So when they started using the force and the violence and the Marines all against the law, National Guard against the law, I think that woke people
So
up.
California's recent
Yeah, I
National
think that had
Guard
a lot to do with it.
activation probably, yeah, definitely fed everybody's.
Yeah, and then here Wednesday night, you've got to know that all the younger people, I just saw the study on what platforms people use,
Yeah.
and people under 30, 50% use TikTok,
Okay.
and TikTok was filled
Blowing
with
it
those
up.
videos,
Okay.
and so the police unaware. Did you see the video that they put out right before the protest?
Mm-mm.
They put an official video up to warn the protesters, and it starts with zip ties. And it goes to SWAT riding on a vehicle. Have you ever seen in this town SWAT riding on a vehicle?
No.
Like, even when there's been incidents, I've never seen SWAT riding on a vehicle.
Yeah.
Right? So they weren't
So
just
quite
like SWAT.
dramatic.
Yes, and then it goes to like SWAT team, and then them putting their riot gear on, and it's like, dude, you're not intimidating us. It's just
Dramatic propaganda.
yeah, and it's ridiculous because we're not intimidated by that. People on the right might be because they have a different things that motivate them, things that make them scared. But I know most people were just like, oh my God, you're freaking kidding me.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, but it was so over the top, but it was so wrong for the police to put out a video like
So you think that Wednesday night, what happened on Wednesday night helped Saturday
I think so,
be
yeah.
higher attended because of that?
that. Given it's the most I've ever seen at any protest,
Yeah.
and by the most I mean the only protest I've ever seen that's that large, the unions put together, and they had a band at the end and food, and that was 15,000. And the unions can always, right? But
Yeah.
for a locally indivisible and 50501 is a new group organizing something, the biggest I've ever seen is 2,000, and that was on the impeachment night.
Wow.
Yeah, so 8,000 people showing up in Vegas means Vegas has woken up.
What do you think really contributed to this being so well attended across and you were even sharing with us outside of the country, so well attended just like globally for this to hit the numbers that it hit?
I think it's all the things you mentioned. I think one, it's a due to the Squeaky Wheel Parade.
Squeaky Wheel Parade. I love that moniker.
Squeaky Wheel
Squeaky Wheel Parade.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, basically, there is a video out there where this tank is going through these bleachers, right?
Yep.
There's bleachers on either side that are maybe a fifth full.
Ah,
Like
so
they're
sad.
practically, other than the first couple rows, they're practically empty, and the crowd is very silent, and all you can hear is the squeaky, wheels of the tank, and so that's why we're referring to the squeaky
Yeah.
wheel.
I feel bad for military. I've had a lot of military friends over the years. They really believe in, trying to protect us and do better things in the world. And that parade was just such an embarrassment for
The
them.
military have an oath to protect the Constitution.
Yes, exactly.
The military, let me repeat that. The military have taken an oath to protect the Constitution. They do not protect whoever is in power in the Oval Office. That is not the intent of the military. And it is also unconstitutional to activate the military against its own
Yes.
citizens. This is very important because when there were Marines in California last week, that was unconstitutional, was it not?
Completely unconstitutional. They're not allowed to police their own citizens. And
I don't think most people know that.
Yeah, it's not. It's the I'll probably say it wrong. The Posse Comitatus law. And actually, back when Katrina, there was a delay getting help in because Bush wanted to take over the National Guard of Louisiana, and the governor said no. which was her right to do, and she wanted to do because she thought they would never leave.
Right.
So, so taking over the National Guard and sending the Marines are both unconstitutional, and Trump is relying on a law from the 1700s to give him this right. They were having hearings today about it. So basically under this idea of the president having this all power, that there's no checks and balances.
Yeah.
I forget what the name of it is, but so anyway, yeah. So it was all unconstitutional. And if you go on TikTok and you look at Vet Talk or the military talk, you can see a lot of them are very outraged. So if anyone,
they should be.
yeah. And if people saw the Trump Fort Bragg speech where they were behind him booing Biden and all that, first of all, they could all be taken out of the military for that. There's actually a rule.
Oh.
And in the UMCJ
Okay.
that says that you're not allowed to be partisan like that. But they were screened for
They were
weight,
selected.
Yeah,
for
so
weight
that's
to
it,
look
yeah.
fit, and also for being Trump supporters. If you actually look on TikTok and you look at the military community, they are enraged by all of this. Most of them. Of course, there's some that are going to support. And my friend who's in the National Guard Reserve said, who's an officer in there, said it's very interesting. People don't remember during the pandemic they wouldn't get the shots, so they were kicked out. And the ones that came in got the shot, so they weren't them. So instead of the military being very Trump heavy, they're not allowed to arrest American citizens. The loophole they use to arrest people is if you're undocumented, you have to have ID on you at all times. You have to have your paper, whatever your papers are. And if you don't, then they can arrest you. But U.S. citizens, they can't arrest. They can't even ask for your ID. But if you don't, then they arrest you, take you down, and then you're released once they can prove your choices.
So they're just trying to inconvenience
Yes.
citizens.
Yes. So that's where the Wednesday protests came out of.
Okay.
That and people being, of course, just taken from their jobs and things like
Well, as you can see, it was a busy protesting week.
Yes.
that.
It
Yes. It was good though.
Yeah.
Nothing like a good
very
protest,
positive.
really.
Nothing like a good protest.
Have you heard of any other protests organized or otherwise coming up?
Not yet.
Okay.
But people can check mobilize.us.
Okay.
Good.
And mobilize.us is where they will list the protests. I will say always make sure that it is a organization that is well known and has rules, because there are some people that organize protests for their own purposes.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
sometimes those can be agitators, or those can be people that
Right.
don't follow peaceful non-resistance. So it's always best to make sure you're going to a organized protest. So 50501 is a big one. Indivisible is a big one. There's quite a few, and you can look up the organizations online and make sure that they're legit. And in locally, we have Battle Born Progress, Plan.
And if they're paying, they're probably nefarious. There's all kinds of rumors out there that if you protest, you got paid
I'm
for
still
it.
waiting for my check.
Yeah,
I know,
It's been
right?
10
I'm
years.
still waiting for my Doge $5,000 too, by the way.
Well, Kristine, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us. You definitely are an expert on something that we
Oh, I don't know
just
if I'm
touched on.
expert, I appreciate
We
it.
feel
Have
that
the
way.
experience.
You have the
You have
experience.
experience,
We
yeah.
appreciate
Yes.
that. So make sure you like and subscribe, and hopefully you get more. You want more of the content that we're giving you. And thank you again for joining us on the Liberal Lounge. Bye.
Bye.